What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about giving advice. Now, I know in my last video, we talked about receiving advice and, the kind of advice that you get from people. But in today's video, I really think it's important to talk about for two reasons. Number one, if you have, obviously, depression and anxiety, I think it is good to help people. Because when you try to, when you try to help people, what it does is, I feel like with me specifically, it helped me not be in my head as much, right? Because when you're helping other people, you're taking the focus off of you, and you're directing it towards other people, and you're really trying to understand them and what's going on in their lives, and you're trying to help them and make them better people. And then also, maybe if you're watching this and you don't have depression and anxiety, it's maybe just more for you to help yourself to maybe be that person in someone's life that they go to you for advice because of the way that you are when they're asking for advice, because there is a couple differences. So I kind of wanted to get into those today. Now, like I said in the last video, we can't change other people, but we can certainly change ourselves, right? So we can't help that some of the advice we're going to get they're not really going to ask us what's going on. They're just going to give advice that they think is the best, right? But what we can do is make sure that we are being those people that are asking those questions and making sure we understand, what's going on with them. And if you haven't seen my other video, I'll put a link in the description below. Definitely check that one out first before maybe going to watch this one, okay? Okay. So now, with giving advice, there's a couple of things that I do. So when people come to me with advice, or maybe they're just talking about like a serious topic or issue, the first thing I try to do is try to remove myself. And by that I mean like any thoughts, positively or negative thoughts that I have towards whatever subject we're talking about, right? Because I feel like, if you are coming from a place of you already have preconceived notions about a specific subject, you're unable to give that person the advice that's best for them. You're really going to give advice that works for you based on, whether the positive or negative experiences you've had in the past. And I feel what that helps you to do is really more listen in a non-judgmental way, right? Once you have the ability to remove yourself from that situation and not think, negatively or even really positively as well, just understand that that person's telling you what's going on in their life, and it really has nothing to do with you, right? They're not asking you or telling you how you would handle the situation. They're asking for advice. So really, you just need to understand where they're coming from so you can give them maybe the advice that's best for them, even if it's not best for you, if you were in that same situation. And it's very difficult to do because you're essentially telling, someone to do something that maybe you might not do, but it seems like it's the best way for them. And, stick with the same, example I gave in my last video, right? If somebody is talking to me in that situation, say they just broke up with somebody and they don't know what to do, maybe how I would attack it is I would just ask them, okay, well, how are you feeling? And they would tell me how they're feeling. And then I would, maybe ask them, okay, well, what do you feel like you want to do, moving forward? And if they ask me, like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, do you want to get back into a relationship right away? Do you want to maybe just take it slow and just have some fun and see where that goes? Or do you want to maybe take a break from relationships and dating just in general? What do you feel like you want to do? Right? Now, let's say if the person says, really any of the three, right? They could say, I want to take a break. I want to, maybe just hook up and just have fun. Or I want a serious relationship, right? Now, they could say any of the three, and now I may not agree with the answer they gave, right? Let's just say, for example, they say they just want to take a break, and they don't want to date at all, right? Now, I may not necessarily agree with that because I feel like if you're going to do that, if you were to come across somebody that is a good person for you, you may miss out on them because in your mind you don't want to look, right? But again, it's not what I think, it's not what I feel, it's how the other person wants to go about this situation, right? So if I'm talking to them and I ask them how they're feeling, what they want to do, and they say that, and I say, okay, well, you know, if that was the case, right? And they said, I wanted, maybe just remove myself from dating for a while. I say, okay, if you're going to remove yourself from dating, what are you going to focus on? Right? Oh, I'm going to focus on work or school, or I'm going to focus on, taking care of my family or my mom, whatever it is. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Maybe you could, and then whichever way they said, right? You talk about the positives of whatever it is they said they're willing to do. Right? Now, the only way it's really like maybe not healthy is if they say something like, I'm just going to like do a bunch of drugs or drink every single day because I can't cope with what's going on. Right? Then it's time for maybe a different conversation, because then at that point they are going to do something that's going to hurt themselves long term. Right? Now, if they're going to focus on school or work or just, maybe casually hooking up, having fun, or they want to wait for a serious relationship, realistically, any of those three scenarios, there's nothing wrong with any of those three. Now, you may not agree with all three of them, but there's nothing wrong with any of those three. Now, like I said, if they're going to be drinking or doing drugs and going to other means to kind of cope with it, then at that point it's not a healthy thing they're doing. So then maybe then it's time for a different conversation. Now, this is not easy to do, right? And I feel like I'm okay at doing it. I feel like I'm pretty good. Obviously, it can always be improved. But it's not something that's easy. It's not something that comes natural, really, for anybody. It's something you do have to work on. I do feel like the friends that I do have, I feel like when they have something that's wrong and something that's bothering them, I do feel like they come to me often with that because of the way that I speak to them, right? I never make them feel like any decision they make is a wrong or a bad decision, because more than likely it's not a wrong or bad, it's just what they choose to do. And that's, that's the beauty of all of us, right? We're all unique, we're all able to choose which direction we want to go in our lives. And I think, coming from a non-judgmental place when you listen to people talk and you're going to try to help them really is such a huge step, and it's very difficult to do, but it makes people more comfortable when they're talking to you, right? It makes people understand that you actually care about them, and what they want, not necessarily trying to kind of push them in the direction you're going. Because there's a lot of times where people talk to me about certain things that I don't agree with, and maybe I wouldn't want that for my life personally, but I also understand that when you're talking to someone and they're asking you for help, it's not about you, right? It's about them. And a lot of times people are unable to take that step back and say, hey, this person's asking me for help, but it's not about me and telling them what works for me. It's about understanding what they want to do and kind of helping them through that. Now, what if you're telling me like, hey, Vinny, so the person that's asking me for advice, they are actually making a decision that I don't agree with and I think is going to hurt themselves, right? So first, I would definitely ask you to really think about, is the decision that they feel like they're going to make, is it actually hurting themselves, right? Because in that same scenario that I gave, you may feel as if they decide not to date and just focus on school, that they're hurting themselves, right? Because if they meet someone and, they're not going to give that person a fair chance, yeah, I mean, they could technically be hurting themselves. But if they're going to be focusing on their career, that's a positive thing. That's not really a negative thing, right? So you see where I'm going. Again, if you are prejudging based on what you think is the right thing and wrong thing, you may think that what they're doing is hurting themselves, but it's not really, because not everyone has the same thoughts as you, just like not everyone has the same thoughts as me. But if you get to the place where you feel like you've thought about it, you said, yes, I do feel that what this person is telling me that they're going to do is not healthy for them, right? Now, that's a very difficult one too, right? We are not therapists. I am not. You are not. It's going to be a very difficult conversation because we're not trained to help people like that, right? It's very difficult to get someone to change their way of thinking. So let's start there. And don't beat yourself up if you try to give them advice and it doesn't work out. But what I'll tell you what I do, again, this is just what I do. It's not exactly maybe the best way to do it, or, there may be other ways. But for me, and I kind of just did it by what I just said, right, is I preface it by saying, this is what I would do in this particular situation. Or I say, I have not dealt with that before, so I don't know how I would react, but this is what I think I would do, right? So what you're doing there is you're kind of telling the person that you don't know how you would react in the situation, but this is how you think you would do it, right? Which comes off as you're not trying to tell them what to do. You're just trying to tell them, hey, I'm trying to think about how I would react in that situation, and this is what I think I would do. But you're not telling them, this is what I would do if I was in that situation, because then it comes across as like pushy and like you are telling them what to do and what decision to make, And let's say you have been in that situation before, right? Let's say if somebody calls you up or they're talking to you and you have been in that situation and you think that they're making maybe a decision that you think is going to hurt them, right? You could now preface it by saying, well, I was in that situation before and I know what had helped me was I did X, Y, and Z. Again, you're not telling them like, oh, I was in that situation and you should do this because that's what I did. You're just telling them what you did, and then you understand that they don't have to take what you said. They don't have to listen to it. But you kind of preface it by just giving them another perspective is all you're trying to do in that situation. You're not trying to change their mind. You're just trying to give them something else to think about. So maybe they think about what you said and they decide to do that thing, right? And I think that's kind of one of the lucky things about me, being able to go to therapy for 3 years is, again, I'm not a therapist, but I think I did pick up on it a little bit, right? If I was telling my therapist something that maybe she didn't agree with, instead of telling me not to do that thing, right, what they do is they just give a different perspective. They don't necessarily even give it in a way where like they want you to change. It's more just something to think about, right? And then the goal is that you'll think about it and maybe say like, hey, that is a good idea. Maybe I can do it that way instead, right? Again, like I said, I'm not a therapist, so it's just, again, my advice on how I kind of give advice to my friends. And I feel like, I do have a lot of friends that do come to me for advice, and they do come to me when, things happen, and I appreciate that, guys. And again, I do feel it's because of the way that I come across to people. So that's it for the video, guys. I just felt like I needed to make a video on this topic as well, because it's not just about the advice that people give you, it's about being there for others as well. And, if you like the video, make sure you like the video. Please subscribe so you can see more videos like this. And again, if you have not watched that first video on giving advice, please click the link in the description below and go watch that video. I think it's a very good video as well. Again, I love you guys. If you feel you need to reach out, definitely feel free to contact me. I'm always there for you, okay? Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one.